We're going to start now our panel, our Women's Economic Agenda panel, and I want to thank everyone for being here for this, because this panel is going to be moderated by our own living legend, Ms. Belva Davis. Now, you know Belva, where is Belva? Belva is the first African-American TV journalist in the West. She helped change really the face and the focus of TV news. In a career spanning half a century, Belva has reported on many of the most explosive stories of the era, including issues of race, gender, and politics. And so I want Belva, where's Belva, to come forward now and to just mention that Belva held, I believe, my first fundraiser when I ran for the California Assembly in San Francisco. Guess who the special guest was at her house for that fundraiser? It was Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm. And so thank you, Belva, for that fundraiser. Thank you. So Belva's going to moderate our phenomenal panel now.
Well, good morning, first of all. And I don't usually get nervous at events, but I'm actually shaking today. Well, because these women are women that I've known since before they had Congress or any other titles in front of their names. They were grand worker women. I had to spend lots of time convincing men that they should be taken seriously. They probably know that. I think the first time I went out with Lynn Woolsey on a door-to-door when she was just really feeling the urge to be in Congress so much that she was willing to do whatever it takes. And I remember having to fight for a camera person to be there at 7 or 8 o'clock, whatever time you were pushing doorbells. So I have personal stories about all of them, and I can even thank Leader Pelosi for forgiving me for being part of a group, a panel, the 1984 Democratic Convention. We were talking about the wonders of it. She was on the panel, and all we asked her about were the parties, and she never forgot it for quite a long time. That was before she had Congress in front of her name. So there's stories about all of them. So I'm so happy to be here today, actually feeling a life cycle, seeing them going on to be icons who will one day maybe have a stamp in their image. This is a panel about a lot of things that are important to all Americans, but of particular interest to America's women and the women of the world. And so we've invited a panel that represents that. Lynn Woolsey, I told you about. I've known her all of her career. Barbara Lee, I've known since a mere child. And so, and on the panel too, I'm going on with these introductions, is a woman who was out there almost as early as me, and that is Rosy Chu from Channel 2. Rosy celebrated 42, oh, you can't hear me, okay. Rosy celebrated 42 years of service at KTVU yesterday. It was Rosy's last day was yesterday, in fact. She's an Emmy Award-winning I'd say journalist, reporter, public servant, and caring woman. And she's on our panel today to help us talk about where we are today. And the celebrity guests, you know. But today, these two women are celebrities because they are the real world. They are the women that we talk about. They are the women that we should be fighting for. So we want to be encouraging to them to stay right out front. Ilma Aparicio, and I mispronounce it, of course, is here representing fast food workers. They are the new frontier. Ilma works for Burger King. She speaks out on behalf of women, the fast food industry. She only speaks Spanish and will have a translator today.
Congresswoman Lynn Woolsey, just to frame it, when women succeed, America succeeds, as we kick off our panel, because she carried the legislation, the Balancing Act, when she was in Congress. She's a mother, a grandmother, formerly a public assistant recipient, and gets it. And we miss her tremendous leadership in Washington, but she's still out here fighting on behalf of women and children. And so, Lynn, why don't you start it out there?
Thank you, Barbara. Thank you. Actually, I thought if I told my story, there's my mother down there. She actually thinks that's her mother.
That's her mother. They have a lot of secrets we can't tell.
Yeah. Sisterhood. I thought if I told my story, it will just pull everything around to why each one of these panelists and their stories make a picture that the United States of America cannot ignore. Now, you have to know my story is 40 years old. I was part of a perfect family, perfect husband, 2 beautiful children, successful husband. We weren't even 30 years old. I got to stay home. My husband worked. He was a securities trader on Montgomery Street in San Francisco. Actually, Good Housekeeping magazine was my Bible. And then, boom, it all changed. Our life turned upside down and inside out. My children's father abandoned us. He was diagnosed manic depressive, and he refused treatment. So there I was 28 years old. I had 1, 3, and 5-year-old children. We lived in Marin County. We lived in a beautiful house that we could afford when my husband wasn't crazy. And that wasn't the way it was supposed to be. But it was. I went to work, sold my car, and got an old beat-up Volkswagen Bug, which is very appropriate 40 years ago, actually. Sold the house. It actually, the papers were signed exactly 1 week before the house would have been repossessed. I moved to a small cottage with my 3 children in San Anselmo, California. We had everything we owned, which we own, a house full of nice furniture and electronics and whatever a person's supposed to build up when they've got a home. We had got to take our washer and dryer from our house and $200. I couldn't make ends meet. I was working, remember, working in San Francisco. So I started looking for a second job. I thought, okay, nobody has more energy than Lynn Woolsey. And I thought, okay, I can have a nighttime job or I can have a weekend job, and then that'll make everything, pull everything together, along with my job in the city. One of my friends said, Lynn, do you know about aid for dependent children? Huh? They didn't write about that in Good Housekeeping magazine. Well, I applied for AFDC, and with the AFDC we received, and with my job, we were actually able to keep it together. Now that was over 40 years ago, when welfare actually provided a true safety net for families. We were on aid for 3 years, and the entire time, and my friends thought I was just crazy because I would talk about this. I was so thankful that I had what I had. I had an education, I had good job skills, I was healthy, my children were healthy, and I was assertive. So I was able to get through the system, and I spoke English. And I worried so much about what was happening to the other mothers who didn't have the privileges that I had just going into the system. But I can tell you that without help from a caring government and without the amazing friends that I had around me and an employer that was absolutely supportive, which was very unique, that was 40 years ago, I think we would have been lost. In today's world, we would have been living in our car. But you know, all of that investment in my family and myself has more than paid off for our government. We have more than given back. I've raised 3 successful kids. I've certainly participated in our government and trying to make things better from others. And as I progressed, when I could get free of the burden of not knowing exactly that I could make ends meet, I was able to put my energy towards what I knew was my mandate, and that was to give others who were less fortunate a leg up. And I believe that is what our government is supposed to be doing. And that is where I have pushed for the last at least 30 years. I was an executive for 10 years before running for Congress, and the president of the company, he'd say, "Lynn, I can't stand it. You keep coming down the hall on a white horse. Will you just take what you've accomplished and enjoy it for a while without coming up with the next thing I have to do for my employees?" You know, no, I can't do that. I go forward, I never look back, and that's all there is to it. But where we arrived in this country is not a whole bunch different than where we were 40 years ago. The one thing that's improved slightly is child care. I had 12 child care providers the first 12 months I went to work. Can you imagine 1, 3, and 5-year-old children in that chaos? Now I believe I would have been able to find decent child care if I could afford it. So that is why we need to expand the Family and Medical Leave Act so that it actually pays people when they're out. It's nice to have, and it was important that we passed it when we did 20 years ago, but now we need to make sure people can afford to participate and take advantage of the Family and Medical Leave Act. We need to have paid sick leave. It's good to be able to have time off, but if you can't afford to take it, you're going to go to work sick, and everybody else is going to get sick. It really makes no sense that employers don't have paid leave. And for not only the sick employee, but if the child is in need, or a parent, or somebody else in the family. We need better child care, we know that, and we'll talk about that today. We need preschool available to all children, free and volunteer. We need flexibility, and that's where the Balancing Act, which I wrote, but it covers all of this. And if employers can't be flexible with their employees, then they are not doing their part in making sure that families can stay whole and complete. So I'm anxious to hear all the rest of these wonderful women today, and thank you for letting me take this much time. Thank you, Barbara.
Clarissa, would you like to keep talking about child care, because you know a lot about the problems that we're facing today?
All right. Okay. Hello. Hi. Okay. Good morning. Yes, I'd love to talk about child care. I talk about child care all day. All right, I'm just going to take it out. My name is Clarissa Douthard, Executive Director of Parent Voices Oakland. Thank you. We work real hard. We work real hard. It's a parent-run, parent-led grassroots organization that fights for affordable, accessible, and quality childcare for all families. And I am so honored and grateful to be here this morning. I am passionate about building parent leadership and advocacy for childcare because of my experiences with my beautiful 6-year-old son, Xavier, who's here today with us. When Xavier was 3 months old, I began looking for work, and at the time I did not live near family or close friends. Therefore, I knew I needed to find someone to care for him. While I was thrilled to secure employment, I was disheartened to learn that the only child care option for us was over 3 times the cost of my rent. Luckily, I was able to qualify for a child care subsidy to help with that cost. Luckily, I was able to, help get a subsidy, and with access to affordable child care, I was able to give my child a safe learning environment while I worked hard to pull us out of poverty. By the time Xavier was 3 years old, I was paying 1/3 of his preschool costs, consistently advancing at work, enrolling in college courses, and building a bright future for my family. When I lost my child care due to state budget cuts, my entire life quickly unraveled. I was not able to cover the full cost of Xavier's preschool tuition. I was forced to resign from my job and ultimately stay home with him. Like many families, I found myself back to square one and starting over. For me, living on the edge of poverty meant that one setback, the loss of a job, loss of childcare, or not having transportation, has catastrophic consequences on my ability to provide for my family, and also on my ability to get back on my feet. Without the same security or opportunity that help with childcare provided, it was very difficult to find employment. When it was time for Xavier to go to kindergarten, he didn't have enough classroom experience and was not ready. We were asked over and over, didn't he go to preschool? What did you all do? I was devastated to learn that Xavier was struggling as a result of not being able to continue preschool. Today, Xavier is in his 2nd year of kindergarten and doing much better, but it has been an uphill battle. I know that if he'd been able to stay in preschool, he would have been ready for kindergarten. While writing my remarks and practicing them, I asked Xavier about his hopes and his dreams for all families, especially children, and he said, I wish that everyone can have a home and every single kid should have a toy or two, and I want everybody to have a family. In order for everyone to have a home, in order for every kid to have a toy or two, in order for families to be strong, women must succeed. Yes. Yes. Poverty and a lack of educational opportunities go hand in hand, and we stand with Barbara Lee, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, Democratic Leader Nancy Pelosi, to ensure that families do not slip through the cracks. It is a privilege to serve my community as Executive Director of Parent Voices Oakland, and to be given the opportunity to work with brave, powerful mothers who prove that when women lead, no child is left behind. Women are working every day to transform their communities by advocating for their children. We will not give up, and I will never give up on Xavier. Thank you very much.
Well, we talked about the firing line today, and it is there's no more ammunition being shot backwards and forth than that in the fast food industry, as the industry tries to run away from equity for all. So Ilma is with us today to talk about that, and when Lynn Woolsey was speaking, she said, I didn't have the problem of not having English. Well, many of the people who are fighting this battle face that problem. So Ilma, would you start us off? And she has a translator with her.
Hola, mi nombre es Irma Aparicio. Yo trabajo en el Breaking de la ciudad de Pleasanton. Llevo trabajando casi 7 años ahí. Tengo 2 hijos, María de Jesús de 3 años, Said Isaac de 6 meses.
Hello, my name is Irma Aparicio, and I work at Burger King in Pleasanton. I've worked at this restaurant for almost 7 years. I have 2 kids, Maria de Jesus, who's 3 years old, and Isaac, of only 6 months.
Yo llevaba trabajando 3 años en ese restaurante cuando salí embarazada de mi primera bebé. Todo estaba bien, ya que trabajaba mis 40 horas a la semana, hasta que los 4 meses de mi embarazo mi estómago se empezó a notarse. El manager de la tienda me empezó a reducir horas. El manager de la tienda me empezó a reducir horas.
After 3 years of working at this restaurant, I got pregnant with my first baby. Everything was fine. I worked 40 hours a week until 4 months into my pregnancy, when it became obvious that I was pregnant.
Dejándome solo 28.5 horas a la semana. Yo me quejé con él, no entendía por qué me reducía horas si mi trabajo era bueno y eficiente. Entonces me devolvió mis 40 horas. Solo por 2 meses, después de 2 meses, me volvió a reducir 28 horas. Yo me sentí discriminada y triste de que por el hecho de estar embarazada hicieran eso conmigo. No era justo. Seguí trabajando ahí, ya que como madre soltera.
So I complained to the manager because, when my pregnancy became obvious, the manager began reducing my hours. I only worked 28.5 hours weekly. I complained to the manager because I didn't understand why my hours were reduced if my job was always good and I was very efficient. My 40 hours were returned, but only for 2 months. After 2 months, they again reduced my hours to 28.5 hours. I felt discriminated and sad that they would do such an injustice for me for the simple fact that I was pregnant.
Seguí trabajando ahí, ya que como madre soltera tenía mucha necesidad económica, necesitaba el dinero para sobrevivir.
I continued to work there. Being a single mom, I had great economic necessity, and I needed the money to survive.
Durante los siguientes meses de embarazo, yo la pasé muy mal, ya que el manager siguió poniéndome desempeñar más trabajo pesado para forzarme a renunciar. Era muy triste. Muchas veces salí corriendo al baño a llorar de impotencia y vergüenza de ver que ese manager me trataba en frente de mis compañeros solo por estar embarazada. Yo no entendía esto porque el trabajo muy duro, algunas veces más duro que mis compañeros.
The following months of my pregnancy were very hard because the manager would assign heavy tasks for me to do, and in order to force me to resign. It was sad. Many times I would run to the restroom to cry of the impotence and the embarrassment that I felt of the way that the manager would treat me in front of my coworkers, simply because I was pregnant. I couldn't understand why. I worked very hard, sometimes even harder than my coworkers, due to the constant pressure from my manager.
Cuando tenía 8 meses de embarazo, Le llevé al manager una nota del doctor diciéndole la fecha hasta cuánto iba a trabajar en la tienda. Él se molestó, me quitó horas de trabajo, dejándome solo 2 días de trabajo. Eso fue muy duro para mí. Me desesperé solo por pensar de que cómo sobreviviría con 2 días de trabajo. Y no entiendo por qué las mujeres embarazadas teníamos que ser discriminadas y castigadas de esa manera en su lugar de trabajo. Para mí eso es muy injusto. Me quejé, pero nadie hizo nada por mí.
When I was 8 months pregnant, I gave my manager a doctor's note which stated the last day of work as assigned by my doctor. He got upset and reduced my hours once again, leaving me with only 2 days of work. This was extremely hard for me. I got very anxious at the thought of how I would survive with only 2 days of work. I couldn't understand why women in the pregnant state were discriminated and penalized in their workplace. That was an injustice, and I complained, but no one did anything for me.
Uno de los últimos incidentes fue que el manager me forzó a limpiar el grill cada día y yo tenía 8 meses de embarazo. Y me costaba mucho trabajo y le dije que eso era muy pesado para mí. Él me dijo que si no era capaz de trabajar pesado, entonces, ¿para qué seguía trabajando? Yo salí llorando de la tienda porque me lo dijo en delante de todo, en malas palabras. Después regresé, pero todo seguía igual. Nada cambió hasta que el día que me tocó salirme para tener a mi bebé.
In one of the last incidents, the manager forced me to clean the grill every day when I was 8 months pregnant. It was a very difficult task to complete in my state. And I told him that it was too heavy of a job for me. He then told me that if it was too hard of a task, then why go to work? I ran out of the restaurant crying. He told me this in front of my coworkers and even used bad words. I returned to work, but everything was the same. Nothing changed until the day I left to have my baby.
Well, we have to stop right there because right on this panel are people who you're speaking to who have the tools to help relieve the conditions that you're working under or had worked under. And so that is the joy of the moment.
Yo no creo que sea justo que las mujeres embarazadas tengamos ese trato tan malo en ese sitio de trabajo. Eso ya lo llamamos discriminación hacia las mujeres embarazadas y creo que no es justo, es muy humillante, ya que yo lo viví en carne propia. Y por eso me he unido a mis compañeros para luchar por 15 y unión y así poner un alto a esta injusticia en el trabajo.
Thank you, Elma. Thank you very much. We want to just turn just for a moment, if we can, and to the Congresswoman who's passionate about your issue. And just, Congresswoman, would you? Which Congresswoman? I like that.
We'll summarize at the end. Yeah, we'll summarize.
Yes. Well, you know, that gives me a reason because Rosy's on the end here, and that's where we media women usually end up, you know, receiving the information and trying to get the courage in an environment where these things will begin to sound normal to people that women are fighting back. So, Rosy, you've been in the position to help take the message of the alumnas of the world, bring them out to the world, and have her tell stories like this one today.
I'll make this short and sweet. My story is quite different. I was born and raised in San Francisco, immigrant parents. I'm first-born generation. Lucky for me, very blessed, success story in that I went to public schools, didn't know what to do with my life, went to San Francisco City College, decided to get into television of all things, went to San Francisco State. I was very, very blessed in that I found a passion. I was able to get a job almost right away as a receptionist. I didn't want to be a receptionist. This is in the 70s. This is when, late 60s and 70s, when we were women, we were minorities, we were powerful, and I'm not going to be a secretary. But the first job that I got around in the broadcasting business was as a receptionist. Again, very fortunate. I worked very hard for a local radio station. And there was something that was great back in the day when they were trying to get minorities and women into television. That was called the Broadcast Skills Bank. It unfortunately does not exist now, but it was a time when they were trying to bring minorities and women into the business. Local radio and television stations all ponied up some money, created this Broadcast Skills Bank, and when you graduated, you filled out a form, they kept your record, and one day I got a call and said that there was an interview, a position open at Channel 2 TV. It was a secretary to the art department. Well, I was a receptionist, and I was already in line to possibly, be promoted, as my general manager told me, so I was waiting around for that one opportunity. And I didn't want to be a secretary. So no, thank you very much. And they pestered me for two weeks. And I said, okay, I'll go for the interview. A week later, I got the job. And I thought about it for a couple of seconds, but I lived in the East Bay, I was working in San Francisco, I wanted to do television, and it gave me $50 more a month. So for the grand total of $450 a month, I went to Channel 2. Again, luckily it was the atmosphere where they were creating jobs for minorities, creating programs, and I was in community affairs for the vast majority of my life at Channel 2. 42 years there, 4 years in news. Over the years, I've been blessed with being able to meet a cross-section of people to this day, a lot of women of color who are really working hard to help people like down at the end or guest speakers there in childcare, in raising themselves up, in supporting themselves. There are terrific opportunities out there. It's not easy. It's not an easy situation, but I can say that all the wonderful people I've met, they work very hard and they believe in themselves, and it takes that special effort and wonderful leaders that we have here and in this room that are dedicated to making all of our lives better. So with that, I'm going to say, I think there might still be a struggle, but we're all headed that way. I was in charge of an internship program at Channel 2. We finally, at corporations around the country, are finally getting the message. We just started paying our interns, and now we have paid internships. I'm pleased to say that I've been able to mentor a lot of young women and young men into the business, and it's not an easy business. You start low pay, but the thing is you get your foot in the door, and it's that tenacity in this business, is that tenacity that's going to get you somewhere. So I think things are looking up. Still a struggle, but again, with the leadership of our wonderful ladies here, I think we have no place to go but up. Thank you.
I could have stopped just saying Congresswoman. I could have said leader, but then all three of them would have answered anyways. But I'm going to the leader now. The leader has heard both here as well as in testimony, I'm sure, over the months, over the years, as you've worked forward and tried to carve out openings in the road of these tales that can go back, as you know, in many, many years. So, Leader Pelosi, why don't you respond somewhat to what you've heard.
Thank you very much, Belva. And I came here to listen, and we all did. Haven't we been? What more eloquent statements of the needs that our country has to meet the needs of women in the workplace than by Irma and Clarissa here today, and the hopeful message that Rosy brought us. They are our very important people on this panel. I want to just tie this morning, the unveiling, to the Capitol of the United States in this way. Again, Barbara Lee talked about wanting to put the painting of Shirley Chisholm in the Capitol, and she is there. But not only is she there, every time we walk down the hall, we get a spring in our step every time we see it. So it's a constant inspiration. And I was reminded when Barbara was speaking is that when we took the majority, one of the things that we wanted to do, in addition to improving the lives of the American people, which was our purpose, but to increase the visibility of minority participation in the success of America, to have that be reflected in the Capitol. So we've had one after another of unveilings, whether Martin Luther King, whatever it happened to be. But one that I want to tell you about this morning is Sojourner Truth, and you'll understand why. When Sojourner Truth, you know her story, you know, a slave, mother, illiterate, this or that, they spoke to presidents and talked about slavery and all the, I mean, she was an abolitionist, she was a feminist, she was something so remarkable because of her severe disadvantage to be born into slavery, but incredible intellect, power, charisma, and the rest. And here's the story I want to tell you. As it turns out, by the time the bust of Sojourner Truth was ready, when we had the majority earlier, by the time it was all ready for dedication, Barack Obama had been elected President of the United States. So we were honored that Michelle Obama came to the unveiling. We had to move it from the rotunda to the Emancipation Hall. Thousands of people showed up. It was so exciting. You remember Barbara, because Barbara was very much a part of making this happen. But when the First Lady spoke, she said this. She said, I know that Sojourner Truth, if she could be here today, would be so thrilled to see a woman Speaker of the House. But I can't imagine what she would think seeing me, Michelle Obama, as the First Lady of the United States. Imagine. Can you just imagine how Shirley Chisholm would feel to see Barack Obama and Michelle Obama as the first family of the United States? That's exactly right. Shirley Chisholm led the way. The first African-American president, the first woman speaker, and the rest. But what is that about? It's about what you do with that opportunity. And one of the things we set out to do to honor the women of Seneca Falls, actually, Frederick Douglass was one of those people, one of the women of Seneca Falls. But anyway, a supporter of that effort. We very carefully, with all of the issues that about reproductive health, health care, violence against women, all of those issues are very important priorities for us. In addition to that, though, we wanted to focus very specifically on the needs of women in the workplace, with an agenda to get something done. And in listening to people all over the country, it became very clear that the three unleashing of opportunity for women revolved about 3 points. We call it When Women Succeed, America Succeeds, an economic agenda for women and families. But it's 3 discrete points. Raise the minimum wage and pass the Pay Equity Act, about respecting the work of women in the workplace. We have the legislation to do both of those things. We just have to get the public support to demand that a vote be taken. We have the legislation, George Miller, our leader in California on the minimum wage issue, and the pay equity, Rosa DeLauro, who has that bill. We have the votes, we have the legislation, we just need them to give us a vote, and you can help us do that. Second point, paid sick leave. I mean, we have the bill. It's called HEALTH. It's an acronym. Each letter means something, but it's called HEALTH. Again, Rosa is in the lead on that. And I'll go back to that in just one second. And then the third piece, the child care piece. This is a crusade that we have to have in America. This is the missing link in the success of women. Women, the people of Seneca Falls started a campaign that took decades to give women the right to vote. And when women got the right to vote, you know what the headlines in the paper said? Women given the right to vote. No, women weren't given it. They worked, they starved, they lobbied, they marched to get the right to vote. At a time that it was unheard of that women even raised their voices in the House about women's issues. Yeah. And they left home, they made this happen. So that's what we have to do. And so I just, on those 3 points, want to say this. Why we say America succeeds. If you raise the minimum wage, you lift millions of people out of poverty. It's the right thing to do. But it's economically beneficial to our whole economy. If you have pay equity, I mean, why should a woman in many states in our country work the first 3 months for free compared to her male counterpart, same skills, same job, although she gets 77% of what he makes? It's just plain wrong. And families pay the price. Opportunity for children because mom's working and they're not getting compensated. Now, on that score, on one of our events, because we've had these events all over the country, none as exciting as this. But one that we had was, I was invited to put one of these, When Women Succeed, America Succeeds, to honor the 50th anniversary of President Kennedy signing the Fair Pay Act. This was at Harvard and then the Kennedy's library auspices. And all over the walls, they had provisions of the bill. You know, it was one of those big things with video and this or that. Do you know what the bill said? Equal pay for equal work, race, care. I mean, it's the same argument. It's the same fight. 50 years later, with pictures of Eleanor Roosevelt and Esther Peterson and champions of women's rights at the time, the president signing the bill, but we still have to make it a reality. And we raise the minimum wage, not to a minimum wage, to a living wage. Okay. So on that score, we go to the next point. There is no real developed country in the world that says to their people, you're sick, too bad. We passed the family medical leave. 100 million families, 100 million times it has been taken advantage, 100 million times. But for many people, it's not paid. It must be paid. And I'll tell you this story. And because I'll tell Clarissa's story and Irma's story when I go around, but I'll tell you this story. A woman came to one of our first events in New Haven, Connecticut. She was a woman who had single mom, on welfare, the whole thing, overcame all of her challenges, and now she had a job as a school bus driver. And she said, I was told to tell my story, but I want to tell you the stories that I see. She said, in the morning, I know it's going to happen. The school bus pulls up to a curb. I see a mom with tears in her eyes, and I know that she's going to put a sick child on the bus because she has absolutely no alternative. Right. She cannot afford child care, and there is no affordable quality child care for her to access. She cannot take a sick day because she doesn't have any. She cannot be docked a day of work because she can't afford it. And if she does that once, twice, 3 times, she has no job. Right. And that is the United States of America in 2014. We will not let that stand. All of these are related. All all of these issues are related. Jackie Spear, who we were with Clarissa 2 weeks ago with Barbara, and Clarissa told her story there. This story about childcare. Your child is behind in school because the state cut off a tax credit or a credit for childcare. What is this? This is about our future. These are everybody's children. This is about our country. And so I'll tell you this story. I will tell Clarissa's story about how they said, you don't have the credit, but why wasn't your child in preschool? It's like, what? Okay, so this other woman came to tell her story, how she was a single mom, 5 kids, Irma, 5 kids, single mom, blah, blah, blah. She has this job, and she is a supervisor in like a Head Start initiative. And she's so proud, and she got promoted to supervisor. And so she was invited to Hunter College, Madam President, that's where we were, to have a session like this. She said, I felt confident about my children as a mother, felt confident about my job, but I was scared to death to tell my story at Hunter College because, you know. So she said, I practiced my speech on my kids the night before. And I practiced what I was going to say about my experience and the need for childcare and the need for strong, even earlier Head Start and the rest. And it was over. She said to the children, do you have any questions? Similar to Clarissa's question to Javier, and wasn't his response beautiful? Well, this woman asked her children, do you have any questions? And a little girl, 4 years old, a little girl in Head Start, she said, I just have one question, Mom. Who gave you permission to use my name in your speech? So, I mean, you go, girl, right? The self-esteem, just the confidence, and the rest of it. Do you need any other statement about why Head Start is important? But as Clarissa is parents' voices, and what we say, children learning, parents earning. And just one point on this. One more point on Irma's story. Children, President Kennedy said, are our best hope for the future, our greatest resource and our best hope for the future. How could Irma be telling that story in our country when she is pregnant with a child and there isn't an elevated place for her at work, much less a harder challenge? And one woman told a story on the camp just like this. She got a note from the doctor, said, just give this to your boss. It says, no heavy lifting. And the boss said, you won't have any heavy lifting because you don't have a job. That is so disrespectful for moms and for children and for our country to even have that happen in our midst. But we have legislation to correct it. What we need is your help to have a drumbeat across America that we will not stand for this any longer. And men are with us all the way. And President, some in this room. I'll close by saying, as President Lincoln said, public sentiment is everything. He had some heavy lifting to do himself, and he had to bring the public along to do it. We know this isn't partisan. It isn't men, women. It's about families. All of the things we're talking about benefit men, too, in terms of sick leave. And there are some men have said to me, I've taken more days off of work to care for a sick parent than I ever did for a sick child. So this isn't about children sick leave. It's about family sick leave. So we have important work to do. We have the legislation. You've helped us to establish the priorities, which really will unleash the power of women, and that is very good for women, for families, for our country. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to take other stories across the country, but to build a drumbeat out there so we can just get a vote. We have the solutions, we have the votes, but we need the Speaker to give us the permission to do it on the floor. And takes us back to President Barack Obama. All of this is his agenda. Sojourner Truth would be proud. Shirley Chisholm would be proud, because this is the speech that the President made the other day. It's what he works on day to day. We just need a bill to reach his desk, and life will be different for Irma, for Clarissa, and other, well, you've already gotten to a place, but for their stories across the country. So when women succeed, America 60.
All right. Seconds are precious now. We're way over time. But I did have permission earlier, I hope it still holds, for a few questions from the audience. And we will have a microphone coming around the room someplace where you can address it. But please, 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 we've had a lot of speeches, so can we have a couple of questions? Okay.
Let me just acknowledge Councilmember Lynette McElhaney from Oakland, from West Oakland District, doing a phenomenal job. Thank you for being here, Lynette.
Hi, I'm Mariah Taylor. I'm a senior here at Mills College. I want to thank everyone for being here, and I was just curious, is your manager still there at Burger King, or did you get a new manager who treats you right?
Uno sí sigue, él sigue en la ciudad de San José, el otro lo corrieron.
They fired one and the other got transferred to San Jose.
Hello, distinguished guests and panel. My name is B. Glenn, and I'm alumni, and I am an alumni of Mills College. My question is, I think that children don't get enough consideration in policy and public policy anyway. So do you think it would be a better approach to take it to the adults? Think in terms of the price that adults pay in regards to child care and being children advocates, advocacy for children and so forth.
Well, I'll respond very briefly and just say the majority of what this is about has to do with children. You know, we recognize, and Marian Wright Edelman Children's Defense Fund really has a seat at the table in Washington, D.C., ensuring that the children's needs are part of this overall economic agenda. We have 16 million children living in poverty, and early childhood education, affordable preschool, universal preschool, that's key in the President's agenda and Leader Pelosi's agenda in this overall When Women Succeed, America Succeeds agenda. And so we have ensured that children will lead on this. So thank you again.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Palmer. I am an MPP candidate here at Mills College, Public Policy Department. It's an honor to be in the room with all of you. I would like to ask you about the recent cuts to SNAP and how social safety nets in the United States are helping a lot of people, including myself and my family. To further women and families, can you speak to what we need to do about protecting those SNAP dollars?
Well, if I just may say of Barbara Lee that she has been, let me just say this. She's distinguished, she's courteous, she's polite, she's dissatisfied, she's relentless, she's persistent. And I mean, not only with our colleagues, but with the White House. Is that not so? Don't mess with Barbara Lee when it comes to the care and feeding of our children. And Lynn Woolsey, they have this sisterhood, I don't know, they gamble together or something, I don't know what it is. But that's with Mom. But they have this bond on this subject that leads the way for us. And I think it's really important to remember this about all of the safety net. It is a safety net for people, and that's something that is of value to us. But it's a safety net for the economy. Much of this, public support, whether it's food stamps, housing support, you name it, is there to subsidize businesses that are not paying a decent wage to their workers. So when they demonstrate demonstrate their disdain for people who need food stamps and they don't work hard enough and all this stuff, they really should be taking it to those companies and saying, you have a big bottom line because you're not paying a decent wage. And the taxpayer is subsidizing you with food stamps and housing support, unemployment benefits, and the rest. And yet, they oppose all of that. And they want budgets that reduce the deficit by cutting the safety net, and at the same time, not want to cut any special interest loopholes. Now, I just want to tell you this one thing, because Mandela, I know, is important to everybody in this room. Barbara went to his funeral in South Africa, and we were very proud that she and the Black Caucus led the delegation. But while she was there, we were at the cathedral in Washington, D.C., and the ambassador from South Africa gave a beautiful speech. And then he was referencing historical things. He said, we don't have to worry about bulldogs in Birmingham or whatever in Spotsville. Wait, we went through that. He said, what we do have to worry about, that Nelson Mandela would want us to worry about, is the selfishness of people who say that people are poor because they are lazy. They are sick because they are immoral. Violent because of their genes. That is one of the challenges that we're up against. The attitude that people have toward an economy that works for everyone. And that, this is Shirley Chisholm was about and the rest. So this conversation is not only specifically about budgets and food stamps and the rest. It's about who we are as a country and the community that is supposed to be so strong. But that, I don't like to be the bearer of bad news, but that lack of respect on the part of some for the needs of people. And one thing I heard from a man on one of these things, he said, I want you to add this, because when you're poor, and he said, I was raised very poor. And if any one thing happened while you're trying to juggle it, if any one thing happened, an unexpected bill, a reduction in hours, it had a physical impact on you. It made you sick. How could we be doing this with all of the greatness of the United States of America? We are going to make all of this happen. And when we do, it's going to be about one word: respect. Respect for every person in our country.
And let me just say, given the fights we're engaged in D.C., Lynn knows, and I know from personal experience, that nobody wants to be on food stamps. 99.9% of people on food stamps want a job, a good paying job with benefits so they can take care of their families. That's what it's all about.
Follow up, and then only two more questions, one here, one there. Thanks.
I just wanted to quickly thank you for fighting the fight for us, because I know that you both are really working hard, and I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Marguerite Brown. I live in San Francisco, and I see one solution, or a part of the solution is that 2014 November is coming up. What are we doing to get the House of Representatives in order and keep the Senate the way that it is at least? How do we do that? What tools do we, and every person in this room can be a part of that fight, I think. Can you give me your feeling about it,
Well, far be it from me to talk politics to a group of this kind. I didn't really want to go to that place, but I think it's self-evident. Look, in our country, we've had two parties and maybe more where we have a difference of opinion, and that is to be respected. But for us, we have never seen, as Democrats in the Congress, ever seen a lack of respect on the part of the Republican Party as they have for the President of the United States. And they have objected, they have obstructed everything he has tried to do. Universal pre-K, oh, that's a good idea, but we don't want to have to pay for it. We're too busy giving tax breaks to oil companies for us then to use some money to pay for preschool. So what it is a situation where we were always respectful of President Bush. We fought him on the war in Iraq. We fought him on privatizing Social Security. But we could find some places to help people with a tax code that had a child tax credit and low-income tax credit and the rest of that. We worked with him on energy, on PEPFAR, Barbara Lee taking the lead on PEPFAR, making it bigger and better, but working with the President. So we found common ground. But this group their agenda is nothing as far as the President's concerned, and never is their timetable. Nothing and never. Does that work for you, Mr. President? It doesn't work for the American people. So it is really important, and again, I hesitate to go into political terrain in a university setting like this, a college setting, but the fact is, you asked. As the President would say, I'm just saying. That it is very important that we either change the majority in Congress or change the minds of the majority in Congress so that they know that we have to raise the minimum wage and we have the vote. We have to pass comprehensive immigration reform with a path to citizenship. We have to pass background checks for gun safety that we must do. We have to, and while we do that, we have to change the role of money in politics by passing public financing of campaigns and overturning Citizens United. So again, public sentiment is everything. The public agrees on gun safety. The public agrees on minimum wage. The public agrees on unemployment benefits. The public agrees on immigration. We just have to make sure that the public votes and that the public weighs in so that attitudes, minds will be changed, if not bodies changed, and who is in Congress. So.
We're out of time.
What this means is that once again we'd have Speaker Pelosi leading this agenda. Yeah. That's what it all means.
And Chairwoman Barbara Lee.
We're down really just
The
a
last
few
one?
minutes.
Yeah.
No, we have a special honored guest here that I'd like to give that last question to if possible. And it is a question.
Don't be looking at me. I'm the youngest one in here. I'm 29 years old. Yeah, I'm Vic Medeiros. Most of you know me from broadcasting done, but I came to really be a part of these honorable women. I just wish to say 2 or 3 little things. Number one, the last time Barbara invited me over, my inspiration and a lot of inspiration from people my age say that we must train up children in the way they should go. And when they are of age, they will not depart from it. We have found in Washington and in the church and everywhere, people have departed their age. There's such thing as a mental age, and there's an educational age, and there's a, say, spiritual age. That ain't what I'm talking about. I'm talking about we finding babies in Congress, babies, and please forgive them, for they know not what they do.
Okay.
But I want you to do this. I want you to look at, I mentioned this to Barbara and some others. We need to look at a 20-year plan. Don't plan on jumping in the streets getting this corrected in one day. But jump in the street all you want or whatever. But you need to start looking at about a 20-year plan. That means training the little babies up. Now, who are we going to get to train the babies? It has to be the mothers. And all of this that you have said, it's just beautiful.
Well, now, we gave you the honor of the last question. And so I think you have to come halfway with us. Get to the point of the question.
What is the question? My question is that we are expecting children to train up themselves.
Yes.
Television, but question of, I think all of us ought to be, how can we work together as a net together to save our children? I don't know what, giving you money and giving you this, you're giving money and we have these reports.
You ask a very good question. It was certainly the lead-in to where I was going next anyway. And that was with our host today, Congresswoman Barbara Lee, who has the last word, and I think we'll wrap up some of the thoughts that you have. So we thank you.
Barbara's going to have the last word, but I want to thank all of you for sending her to Congress. The answer to Victor's question was answered by Shirley Chisholm when she said, bring us together, U.S. In order to do that in a way that is based on our values and our concern for people, I just say this as you leave here. Don't agonize, organize. Organize.
I know that's what Shirley would have said. Let me first thank our panelists. Let me thank Irma. Let me thank Clarissa, first of all, for your bravery, your courage, for being here. You make it all real for us, and that's what we're fighting for you, for your families, for all of Americans. So thank you. And also, I just have to say to our leader, Speaker Pelosi, thank you for coming. Thank you for spending so much time with us. But also, thank you for giving us the charge, what we need to do in our country to really make sure that women are this catalyst for change, and that when women succeed, America succeeds. So give our leader a round of applause, because we wouldn't be doing this if it weren't for her. She keeps us on point. And to my sister, Lynn Woolsey, I have to tell you, Lynn paved the way in Congress for so many of our initiatives that we're working on today. And oftentimes she was the lone voice, crying out, speaking out for women and children. She actually was the first member who sponsored a resolution to bring our young men and women out of Iraq. 133. How many speeches she spoke each and every day on the floor? At least how many speeches? 420. 420 speeches every day. Every day. Beat that drum. And we miss you, Lynn, but she is doing so much here in California now, so she continues to be the wind beneath our wings. So thank you, Lynn. We love you. To Rosy, I just have to make a small presentation to you, because we want to just say how proud we are of you, because we know the battles you fought. 41 years on your retirement. This is from all of us. I want to thank my staff for doing such a phenomenal job, and all of our Mills College family. Dr. Deckendro, thank you so much for giving us this space and moment. Thank you. And to Belva, thank you so much. Boy, you did the heavy lifting here. And thank you. Even though Belva's retired, she still works for all of us. And so thank you very much. We really love you and appreciate your being here. So you know what we have to do. You know, Mills women, this community, my congressional district, I keep saying we're the most progressive, most active, most diverse congressional district in the country, until Leader Pelosi tells me, no, that's her district. And Lynn used to tell me, no, that's her district. So Northern California, I think, has some of the best leadership in the country. So thank you all for coming. We have stamps out for sale. I want to thank again the Postal Service. We have some refreshments, and we really do appreciate the attention and your involvement and your real spirit to really make sure that this country becomes a country of liberty and justice for all. That means women.